And we're going to have a lot of different new things for the new year. We're looking back at the year past. We're looking at what's going on now, and of course, things coming up, particularly in the legislative session. But one of the changes this new year is, as I mentioned in the email that I hope you all received, was that we have a new co-host. As was mentioned last month, I have moved over to Oregon Eligibility Project to do community engagement there, so I'm not far, but I'm happy to share that Misha Mayers is taking over for community engagement on the self-sufficiency side. So we can say hi. And everyone, Misha.
Good afternoon, everybody. I look forward to working with you more and being a more active participant and facilitator of this meeting for the future, but I'm gonna let James pretty much take it today and stand in awe.
Well, we'll see if we can keep this train rolling on time, but thank you. And so I'm happy to start off with my longtime colleague in all this, Xochitl Esparza, who is going to be talking about our legislatively mandated key performance measures. So I just want to welcome everyone.
Thank you, James. Really excited to be here. My name is Xochitl Esparza, she, her pronouns, and I have a new role at ODHS since the last time I joined this call. I am now leading the program administration team at the Office of Self-Sufficiency. And so it was great to be part of these calls, co-hosting with James, and welcome, Misha. Very excited to have you join. Today, I will talk about the results of a yearly survey that we have been conducting since 2019, which allows us to obtain data for 3 of 5 really key performance measures that we track in the self-sufficiency program. So James, if you would be so kind to share the slides.
There we go.
Oh, are they there?
Can you see it?
Okay, so people can see it. Okay, it's just me who can't. Apologies. Okay, so if you could go to the next slide, please. So so these are the 5 key performance measures. Customer satisfaction is really an enterprise-wide ODHS measure. So we do include it here because we obtain data for that out of the survey that is conducted every year. So today I will not be able to, because of time, I won't be able to cover all of the survey results. I'm hoping to cover at least a couple of them, housing stability and food security, and be able to have time for 1 or 2 questions or more as time permits. So if you could go to the next slide, that would be great. So as I mentioned, it's we conduct this survey every year, typically in the summer, early fall, and originally in 2019, it was deployed in the lobbies of ODHS offices. It was offered in the paper format or could be online through a link, also using the lobby computers. However, since the COVID pandemic, we pivoted to conducting it over the phone for obvious reasons, and it's been conducted in 6 languages. And the audience or the pool is made up of customers who applied or reapplied for SNAP, and you know, in a particular month. So if you could go to the next slide, James, thank you. This year, I'm sorry, last year, so I'm going over the results for 2022. There were a total of 1,785 surveys recorded, and this represents a 7.8 response rate. We had hoped to get a broader response rate, but we had challenges because this was done over the phone, and we did rely on staff in the self-sufficiency offices around the state to help with this survey. They received a training and volunteered to provide it. However, as you all know, it is difficult to get dedicated time, and when we are so pressed for time these days, especially addressing the backlog, et cetera. So as I mentioned, we are really gearing it towards customers who applied for SNAP. And so for last year's survey, it was customers who applied in April. And it was in 6 languages. I do want to I have a big caveat to make at this point, and that is that these results, the survey results are disaggregated by race, ethnicity, and I'll be presenting them that way. And however, there were small sample sizes for some of the populations, particularly Middle Eastern, North African, people who identified as Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander as well. So those 2 populations, we had really small sample sizes. So I want to make that caveat because it does make it difficult to draw conclusions based on those populations. Okay, if you could go to the next slide. Actually, one more point before looking at the first measure is that for this year, we're because of the challenges that I mentioned, we are really going to relook at how the survey is conducted in order, again, to get to expand the sample sizes and get a lot more participation. So when we show the results next year, it'll likely be a little bit different, and that's our hope, that's our aim. Great, so I am going to jump in and talk about housing stability, which is one of the measures that we track. And as you can imagine, this measure is very important because housing is a foundation for successful communities. Affordable and permanent housing, as you know, improves the quality of life of families by leading to better health, stability, safety, and security. And we know now that where a person lives can predict their life expectancy. Housing is foundational for well-being. And when we focus on housing, it does challenge us to think about aligning efforts across agencies and programs, and often to use collective impact to try to find solutions. And this is a huge problem in the state, as you all know. So going into, well, actually last year's survey, it found that 41.6% of survey respondents reported housing stability, which is slightly higher compared to 38.3% in 2021. Based on the survey, when we look at the opposite, 53.2% of the respondents reported housing instability, and this means that their housing needs are not fully met. As I mentioned, this continues to be of paramount concern in Oregon. We know that the significant federal and state investments in the past 3 years likely account for the higher percentages that we were seeing in housing stability. based on this survey compared to the baseline year of 2019, which was pre-pandemic. In this year, in 2022 survey, challenges with housing were once again reflected throughout the survey and the comments. People repeatedly mentioned a lack of affordable housing. Rents are too high, rents are increasing, people are moving in with friends or family to afford housing. People struggle living in inadequate housing. Some people mentioned problems with the structure itself, mold, lack of repairs. And a lot of people also mentioned they are experiencing homelessness. Those who did not have housing needs fully met answered that they need immediate help with housing, or that they have housing, but it's temporary or inadequate, or they need help from time to time to pay bills or rent. The populations that indicated higher percent of housing stability, Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiian, 50%, again, very small sample size, can't draw conclusions, and followed by people identifying as Hispanic or Latinx, 48.6%, and Native American, 43.3%. And the populations reporting they are least housing secure, Middle Eastern, North African, again, very small sample size, 16.7%, and followed by Black or African American, 17.5%. And individuals who with a disability, 34%. So if you go to the next slide, we just wanted to share some quotes from the survey. Hopefully you can see that. I'll read a couple. Rent is so high, I can't afford to continue to pay it, and I'm about to be homeless. I would like to have my own place, but I cannot afford rent in my area, so I'm living with a family member. And some of these quotes also talked about being on waiting lists for Section 8 and the inability to cover rent and utilities. Okay, if you can go to the next slide, James. Thank you so much. Okay, food security. This is an important measure for ODHS, self-sufficiency, well, all of ODHS, because access to nutritious food helps babies hit milestones, fuels kids as they learn and grow, reduces the chances of chronic disease in adults, and makes it more likely seniors can be healthy and independent. When we track food security, again, we not only focus on ensuring access and availability to SNAP and other food benefits that are administered, but it also pushes us to partner across agencies and organizations in order to address hunger. So based on the survey, 33.5% of respondents reported experiencing food security. This year's result is almost 6 percentage points lower than the food security rate reported in 2021. This means that 63.6% of the respondents reported experiencing food insecurity, meaning that their access to adequate food is limited by a lack of money or other resources. A lot of the comments reported that the additional pandemic-related food benefits and the maximum allotments or the EA allotments have been very helpful. However, many respondents also referred to how challenging inflation has been. The higher costs of food and other necessities have made it really difficult. And people expressed a lot of concern with losing these pandemic-related benefits. The populations that indicated higher food security were people who identified as Latinx, 40.8%, and followed by unknown race, or that it wasn't disclosed, 38.1%. The populations least food secure, Asian, 26.3%, followed by a Black or African American, 26.3%. So I think this is, and the next slide has a few of the quotes. And as I mentioned, people said, I hope you don't take away the emergency assistance payments. Again, just expressing a lot of fear about these benefits going away. And a lot of thankfulness also for the additional SNAP benefits, which are a big help to their family. So thank you so much, James. I don't know if I have any time for questions or we're out of time.
Any questions about this survey? I'll stop sharing. You can see that it's a big effort that we do these, and it's yeah, it's really helpful info. I think it's pretty powerful, especially the individual quotes. But without any further ado, we can move over to some of the policy updates then. Thank you, Sochi. And I think, Miguel, are you with us?
Hello, good afternoon. Yes, I'm here. Give me 1 second. I got a little distracted and I was not quite prepared to go on. But yes, my name is Miguel Mendez, lead analyst for the TANF team, and here to just go over briefly over some of the information that we've already previously discussed in this forum, of some of the changes, exciting changes that occurred in the program for 2023. And give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Close the door. Someone's at the door. Okay.
Should we come back to you, Miguel? Or are you good?
No,
Okay.
I'm good. I closed the door. The dog can bark out there. So some of the exciting changes that we implemented. The first one is the availability to replace benefits for those who have been the victim of a scam or skimming situation. So we're super excited about that. Another exciting change that was implemented was the permanent removal of the face-to-face interview requirement for TANF. Obviously, throughout COVID, we were not enforcing that, and there has been some exceptions and hardships put into place where people could request a phone interview, but now we just remove that altogether, so that way there's less confusion for staff and trying to send applicants to a storefront office to complete that interview. So super excited about that. The other update that we had was super exciting that we were able to have childcare policy, ERDC policy, join us in the venture is the exclusion of income from tribal benefits. So such as the quarterly per capita payments or distributions from oil sales and things of that nature. So we were super excited to make that big change, and those are all the updates that I have today, I think, James.
Great. Miguel, there was a question in the chat. So what is the process for replacing stolen or skimmed benefits?
That is a great question. And so when a participant has been the victim of that, all they need to do is contact the office. It could be the storefront office, it could be the VEC. They need to report that that's happened, report it within 30 days of occurrence. And then once we receive the report, they also need to, within 10 days, attest to the loss of benefits and the amount. And it doesn't have to be on an official DHS form or anything like that. It could be just a simple piece of paper, just writing out, I am attesting that I lost $200 of my TANF benefits, and then getting that sent in, and then the worker would replace those benefits.
Beth, does that make sense?
This is just TANF. I saw in SNAP 2, this is TANF and refugee cash benefits as well.
And is there any progress on that happening for SNAP as well? And thank you, by the way, for the answer. I really appreciate it, and for making this change.
That's a great transition, Beth. I can help you answer some of that questions from the SNAP side. I'm Heather Miles, and I'm the program manager for the SNAP team. So we have had some progress. It's not going to be quite as quick as I would like, and certainly not quite as quick as our families would like, but there is progress. So with the omnibus bill and what came in through recent federal changes, there are provisions in that bill that will allow us to start replacing, to a limited degree, some SNAP benefits that have been taken through something of a similar process to this. The card skimming and phishing that is going on nationally has, I think, risen to a level of concern, in thanks due to many of the partners who are on this call, both locally and nationally, raising that concern to the federal level and really articulating the harm that this has done for our families and our communities. So I think Congress and certainly the President's office has listened to that feedback. That provision that is in progress, I guess, in flight, Beth, from the federal side, with the details of how we're going to do some of this work, is still being finalized. But at that high conceptual level, what they're looking at is families in our state will have the ability to have SNAP benefits replaced at least twice in the federal calendar year. At the moment, the provisions in there that will allow us to potentially look at a little bit of retroactive benefits, only so far back as October of 2022. But it's currently in place until September of 2024 in terms of the timeline of what they're giving us right now. There's going to be a lot more details, I think, worked on out around the threshold of what we can replace, and there obviously is going to be some need for us to look at our systems and the best way to be able to do that. But it is exciting news. I think it's a great opportunity for us to be able to improve the customer service. I think the other thing, though, that's still really part of that national conversation is trying to look at other ways in which our federal partners and some of our retail community can help to also support more controls and better safety around people's benefits in general. Honestly, I think that national level of card skimming and phishing, just even outside of our programs, has risen to a level that is concerning to a lot of our vendors and retailers. So it's more to come on that side as well. I think it's not just on us replacing things, it's more proactively on finding ways that we can really try to change that dynamic and that experience for people nationally across the board. So that's going to be probably updates over the next couple of months as we learn more from our federal partners. So there is some other news on SNAP. Would you like me to transition to some of that, James?
Yep.
I'll try and keep this brief.
Yep.
In that same bill that laid out some of the replacement benefits for SNAP was also the notification to states of the ending of the emergency allotment benefit. It's finally sunsetting that the last month that we'll be able to have as a qualifying month has been put out there as February. Just to be clear, that doesn't mean that's a buffer month into March. It means that February really is the last month that people can qualify for the program. Now, what we know with something like this is that we will have some of those benefits that don't get quite through the process of eligibility in February, and so they have reassured us that if it takes us a little bit longer to be able to process somebody's benefits, if they qualified for those EA benefits in February, they're entitled to those EA benefits in February. So we will be able to make sure that those monies get onto the cards for families that have been waiting, and it may take a little bit more time. We are going to be sending out notices, as we've mentioned, to the families that are affected by this change. There's going to be a lot more partner communications and talking points that are going on out. And I want to thank the people again on this call that really helped shape some of that information that we're able to share with our communities. Your feedback and your ability to walk with us in developing some of these things has been absolutely incredible. And I really appreciate the partnership from everybody on the call.
Questions? This is a big topic we're hitting. Yeah, Beth?
Oh, thanks, James, and thank you, Heather. I am trying to remember. I thought that there was some CARES money, some kind of pandemic-related money that we set aside to give a buffer month, so that there wouldn't be such a cliff. There'd be a little bit more time to send notices to people and have them understand this emergency allotment is going down. Can you remind me did we do that? I just mean the state. I remember discussions about it, just so it wouldn't be such a sudden drop in food money. People would have time to prep.
So because technically, it's all in the technicalities on the federal side, Beth, because they posted that the very end of December and gave us notice there, they are considering February as the buffer month, that January is the month that really we have to notify people, which we are going to be sending information out. We have sent press release information out as well, but we will be sending notices to households about this change.
So well, I'm so sorry. I wasn't clear. I thought that we like at one point, one of these meetings or maybe a smaller group meeting, we talked about there was CARES money. What should we use it for? And we talked about using some of it to just use that money as a buffer month. So we could continue to do emergency allotments. No.
Honestly, that would be $70 million. We don't have that level of money to be able to do this beyond what the federal government have been able to allow. I don't know if there's anybody else on the call that wants to add to that from the state side, but I think the dollar amounts were so large by the end of this, we just didn't have that type of money to be able to put to one side to cover everything in that way. It's over 430 something households that are receiving those services right now.
Any other questions? I will add that we definitely need everyone's help to make sure questions are answered. The money is simply not coming, so we need to just be as clear as we can and be clear where services are for people. And I'll add to that it's people calling, eligibility workers and whoever else. It's very understandable, but it also then creates a bit even more of a strain on our taxed workforce. And so we're relying on our partners to try to answer as many questions as possible that people have. So,
James, there was a question in the chat from Linda at Neighborhood House about, does this kick folks into reevaluation for benefits?
Shall I take a a run at that one as well, James? All right.
Go for it.
So it doesn't do that. What this will do, because of how we structured the benefit issuances for the program, the first 1 through 9 days of the month is the SNAP allotment that a family should have normally without emergency allotments. We made sure that secondary issuance around the 11th, 12th of the month was really the one that was tied to emergency allotments. And so what families receive through day 1 through 9 of the first part of the month is what their benefit amount is going to return to once emergency allotments go away. Now, as people come on in and do recertifications for the program, as they renew through the normal process that they would do through our eligibility process, we can take a look at their benefit levels at that point and address things. If, however, they feel that something's really changed in their situation, then it could affect their ability to have a higher allotment of benefits, they can report that to the department, and a worker can work on something along those lines. They can have a reported change that goes in and make sure that they're receiving the right allotment. And for SNAP, when you report a change, it's something that takes effect a month in the future. It's a future effective alteration for the services. But it's a great question, Linda. Thank you for asking that.
Okay. Well, let's move on and talk about.
I'm sorry, I don't want to I
Oh.
didn't mean, sorry, James.
Oh, yeah, go ahead,
I
Linda,
did
I'm
it
sorry.
while you were answering. Thank you for answering, Heather. I threw in a secondary question. I was just trying to, there's something loud happening here. So sorry if you start not being able to hear me. Some folks were notified that their medical was being maintained, not because maybe they qualified or maybe they didn't qualify, but because they were under an emergency protection, because there was this, state was in an emergency status. And so will this cause them to be reevaluated or just have their medical closed since the emergency is over, or is this only for that additional SNAP funding?
So this is, at the moment, this is just about SNAP. This is a change that's been started early for this program. I'm not a medical expert. I will never profess to be that, but our medical programs are in a slightly different time clock connected to the public health emergency. This one, though, is one of those elements that's changing ahead of any of those other changes that are being planned for.
Great. Thank you, Linda, for following up on that. Yeah, these are separate things now, but let's, as I said, let's transition to our legislative outlook. And I'm going to turn it over to Claire Sequin, who I'm trying to remember your complete title right now.
Hi, James. Why, I am your interim SSP director. Nice to see you all. Happy New Year. It's my new title. I hope that 2023 is starting off well for you all. I know already there have been big changes at SSP that I want to start off with today, as well, and at ODHS generally. So the first one I'll start off with is that some of you probably know this already, but Rebecca Jones-Gaston has made her move to Washington, D.C. She was confirmed to her appointment of the Commissioner for the Administration of Children, Youth, and Families at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We have known that was coming for about a year, but it's finally happened, and now she's there working on our behalf in a big new job. And so we're super proud of that, and just can't wait to see what she can do for that particular organization with her insights. And I'm sure we'll be hearing from her again in her new capacity. But here at ODHS, that means that April Flint Gerner has stepped into her interim director role, which we also knew was coming, but now it's official. So that's pretty exciting. And at Self-Sufficiency, we've also undergone some leadership changes. So the reason that I am the interim director currently is because Jana McClellan, the previous interim, left at the beginning of the month to start her new role at the Oregon Youth Authority. So pretty exciting for her. It's doing some passionate work back sort of where she started her career. So she's now coming full circle with her commitment to the Youth Authority work. So that's exciting for her. With the change as interim, we've managed to sort of reorganize some terrific resources. Fortunately, I have Yvonne Lopez still by my side, helping me work with the service delivery side of all things. She has stepped into an assistant interim director role. And then underneath her, we've asked a couple of folks from our service delivery teams to come join her to do some important work. So we have 2 new interim deputy directors who are going to be working to strengthen the relationships that we have with the service delivery folks and partners, and also with the OEP team. So with the Oregon Eligibility Partnership team, and I know Jillian's going to talk a little bit more about them here in just a minute. So I wanted to just sort of underscore why these changes are important to us. And I think that what I want to be really crisp about is that we at SSP are committed to helping break down what we know are the silos that you all face and that clients that we serve face. And we want to be really diligent about how we're hearing voice and how we're hearing feedback in more ways than we have in the past few years. We also know that there is an unprecedented demand for our services, so we are doing our very best to try to build a little bit of a different infrastructure to be able to respond to that. The challenges that I'm calling out, of course, aren't new, but I think Jana's departure allowed us to take a minute to create some urgency around some of these things and an opportunity to find new resources that we haven't really had before. So I'm really excited to have this additional capacity to do the work. We've heard from our communities really loud and clear about breaking down these silos and doing better customer service. And now we've also heard it directly from our new governor. And so it's exciting that we are all on the same page about doing more with the resources we have to serve Oregonians in the ways that they need and hearing what they need. I mean, to Xochitl's KPM report, I love those narrative comments. And could we get more of them next time? Yes, we will, but I think what folks have to say really matters to us. And we want to be able to have the right infrastructure to take those comments and really do something with them. Let's see, on to the legislative work ahead. We are, of course, just as everyone is at ODHS, we are gearing up for the ledge session starting on Tuesday to be in full swing. We are preparing an SSP presentation for Ways and Means, which will probably be sometime mid-February-ish. And we know that our government relations team is busily reviewing almost 2,000 bills that have come in already. So we'll be sorting and prioritizing and working on getting all of the information that is required to give appropriate feedback for all of those new initiatives. Our director Fairboards is going to be presenting to the House committee next Wednesday. So that'll be our first big step into session. And his presentation will be sort of all ODHS related. And so we're all excited to see that. And I'm certain that if you all don't know how to find the links to those live presentations, we can help you get connected to those. It's always interesting to hear from the director exactly where ODHS is headed. And in terms of an interesting piece of legislation that's going to be talked about during this session, I wanted to share with you that on Tuesday this week, Toksana Lake Gillespie, who's the director of the new Office of Immigrant and Refugee Advancement, which is housed in ODHS now, presented to the Senate Majority Office on the office's legislative concept. And Senator Jama is going to be advancing an LC that will establish a formal infrastructure for a welcome and reception center. And the goals of that are to provide sheltering and to coordinate short-term wraparound services, including food, clothing, healthcare, immigration, legal services, education, and transportation, and to coordinate longer-term services related to integration, employment, and leadership development. And these For those of you who don't know sort of how we're structured, we have the SSP Refugee Program, which is funded with the very traditional resettlement agency funding to serve refugees and immigrants. And then we have this new office that is able to look more broadly than our federal funding requirements allow us to look. And so this Welcome and Reception Center is going to be designed to provide the missing services for those folks who don't qualify for our traditional benefits. So it's a super exciting bill, and I can't wait to hear the conversation that's going to happen at the legislature about that. It's a population that we are seeing increasing numbers on daily, and we're not built to serve them yet. And so TAC and her incredible leadership is out there making the case for this additional focus, and I just think that's amazing. So just want to kind of reaffirm what our focus is in the next, 6 months and ongoing, right? We are tasked with the responsibility of supporting well-being for our Oregonian family members, children and adults and their communities. We take that very seriously. We have a responsibility to make sure that we support folks regardless of their race, identity, or place. And we want them to have what they truly need to thrive. So our traditional regulatory approach has organized our services around programs and funding streams. And what we know is that we want to be more responsive than that. We believe that individuals and families are best supported when we work together to create new ways of doing business. And so I really look forward to working in this new role with you together in the coming years to try to do more work, do better work, and serve Oregonians in the way that they need it most. So thanks for the time today, James. Really appreciate it. And I'll be back, I'm sure, reporting on more exciting legislative activities in the coming months.
Thank you, Claire. It's good to see you again. And I want to turn it over to Jillian Johnson, though, with Oregon Eligibility Partnership for a quick update and outlook.
Hello, Jillian Johnson. That's me. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to come back and engage with y'all. So OEP, that's the Oregon Eligibility Partnership. Brief overview is that we are responsible for the governance of the one system through which benefits are provided, and we are also responsible and accountable for the processes in which services are provided, right? So how so service delivery of those services, and we partner very closely with self-sufficiency programs and aging and people with disabilities, as well as the Early Learning Division and the Oregon Health Authority in providing those services. So it's really a sort of the operations type arm, but always in partnership with our fellow programs within ODHS. So I have some updates to sort of talk about in terms of what we're looking at with upcoming legislative session, et cetera. But also I want to recognize that we're sort of at the tail end of our time together, and part of coming together with partners is making sure that you all have space and time to engage and ask questions, et cetera. So I wanted to pause and really provide opportunity to find out what the group's preference is at this point, sort of in the agenda. You want to hear me yammer more, or do you have things you want to know about specifically?
Well, I do have a few people lined up who were going to be speaking briefly about their own legislative concepts too. We could go right to that. For instance,
I was to say, what does this group prefer? I'd love to let you lead what you want in the last 12 minutes or so.
Zoom can make people shy.
It's okay to say in the chat, we want to hear about medical redeterminations. We want to hear about the legislative session. We want to hear from each other about other things.
Well, Molly, I see you on camera. Do you want to give a quick share of your proposal?
Sure. Thank you, James. And thanks everyone for having me here today. I see some familiar names and some unfamiliar names. My name is Molly Natariani, she, her. I work for the Farmers Market Fund, and we coordinate the Double Up Food Bucks program. That's a SNAP matching program. So for every $1 of SNAP that a participant spends at a farmer's market, a grocery, or a CSA, we've got about 150 sites in 31 counties in Oregon. They get an extra $1 of Double Up Food Bucks for free that they can spend on fruits and veggies, up to $20 per site per day. So it's this really elegant way to kind of help families get more fresh fruits and veggies. We're also supporting local farmers and businesses, and then it's really supporting Oregon's economy. So USDA says that every $1 of SNAP that's spent locally generates like $3 in economic activity. So excellent program, and especially salient given all of the changes that are happening for SNAP participants and just Oregonians broadly. Yay, Lily, we love Double Up Food Bucks. So James told me to keep it short and sweet. We are going back to the legislature to seek funding, Farmers Market Fund in coalition with the Oregon Food Bank, Pacific Northwest CSA Coalition, and the Oregon Farmers Markets Association. We are seeking $8 million. This is our third appropriation. We first received funding from the state in 2019. Our vehicle is duplicate House and Senate bills. I can share the bill numbers, and I can share the one pager. I'll put my email in the chat. And yeah, reach out to me if you want anything, and much appreciation to Heather and the team at DHS for being such amazing state agency partners. That's all. Thanks.
And Molly, feel free to put the bill numbers in the chat as well. But I know Ames's camera is not working, so I don't want to discriminate against the camera, against camera failures here. So Ames, you have a bunch of items to share.
I do. Yes, thank you. It's good to see you all. Sorry, you cannot see me. Computer camera difficulties today, all week, really. Anyway, I'll speed this up. My name is Ames Kessler Templin. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the legislative strategist over at Partners for a Hunger-Free Oregon. We have two priority bills this session that we are introducing. I think I can get through them both pretty quick. The first is Senate Bill 610, which is food for all Oregonians. So Hunger-Free Oregon, along with the Oregon Food Bank, we're really excited to introduce this bill. We've also convened a steering committee that includes Adelante Mujeres, APANO, the COFA Alliance National Network, Micronesian Islander Community, the Latinx Wellness Hub, and Unite Oregon. The idea for this bill really came to light during the pandemic because many immigrants and refugees have faced higher levels of hunger in Oregon. Also, Oregonians who are Latinx and Pacific Islander are experiencing hunger at twice the rate of Oregonians who are white. But both documented and undocumented Oregonians are still being excluded from federal nutrition programs. So our goal is to make food assistance more equitable and inclusive, just as we have for healthcare, driver's licenses, and tax credits. So the bill really creates a state-funded Food for All program to fill in state status-related gaps in SNAP. We are wanting to ensure over 62,000 refugees and undocumented Oregonians who are at or below the federal poverty level have access to SNAP. And also part of this bill would ensure that individuals would be able to reach out to navigators for information with assistance in applying, as well as the screening and eligibility process. That bill again is Senate Bill 610. I know I went through that really quick. I'll put my email in the chat for any questions. And then the other bill that we're introducing is Senate Bill 419, which is an Oregon Hunger Task Force funding bill. I won't get much into the Oregon Hunger Task Force as I feel most people on this call are familiar, but if you want more information, email me and I'll give you that info. This bill is pretty sweet, simple. It's just looking to allocate $150,000 of the general fund to the task force so it can increase their ability to continue supporting the state's policy on hunger. This is a bill that comes up every biennium, so we've seen it before. And that's all I've got for you today.
Ames, that was great. Anyone questions? I know we have another visitor, I think Philip Kennedy Wong. Are you with us?
I am. Hi, James. Hi, everyone.
Philip.
Philip Kennedy Wong, he, him, his. I am with the Nonprofit Association of Oregon. I'll keep it very brief. I'm here to talk about Senate Bill 606, which is the Oregon Nonprofit Modernization Act. Some of you are familiar with the survey that we conducted this summer that asked nonprofits to share with us their experiences with contracting, the challenges that they have, and things that they'd like to see improved, and how nonprofits contract with state government. And so we've taken that information and we developed a bill, as well as looking at what other states have done to improve contracting for nonprofits. And so Senate Bill 606 has 3 parts to it. The first part is to make some immediate changes to how contracting is done with respect to the administrative rates that nonprofits have, wanting to make sure that there is a basement admin rate to ensure that nonprofits, when they do contract with state, that they are guaranteed a certain percentage of the funding level as far as what they can use for overhead costs, as well as, doing away with things such as having to front the cost of providing services to be reimbursed later. And sometimes the reimbursement comes late, which comes at a fiscal, difficulty for that nonprofit, as well as ensuring that when you do have a contract with nonprofits, that you're able to get payment within 30 days of when the contract is signed. So that's like the first part. The second part is the creation of a nonprofit workforce retention fund that would provide grants to nonprofits that are facing challenges with maintaining their workforce. Some of you know that nonprofits, because of the low wages, they're not immune to the high cost of living, from childcare to affordable housing. And that creates this pressure for nonprofit employees to essentially leave for other jobs, and it comes at a price to the nonprofit. So what we're wanting to do is create a grant program for the biennium that would essentially provide grants to nonprofits to help retain their workforce. And then finally, the third part is that what we're trying to do is start the process for taking a look at long-running problems with contracting between nonprofits and state agencies. So that would include doing essentially a soup to nuts revision of how contracting is done, from the application process to reporting requirements, to ways where we can streamline the process, create some greater flexibility for nonprofits, and then look for ways in which we can develop contracts that will allow nonprofits to pay better wages for their employees. So that being said, we are having a campaign kickoff where we will be explaining the bill in greater detail. And I'm going to put in the chat registration for the campaign kickoff, where we'll talk to you in greater detail about what the bill does and how you can get involved. Thank you, James.
Yeah, this is the point where I should put in a disclaimer saying we're a state agency. We're waiting on the governor's budget to come out. Whatever's in the governor's budget, or whatever we get special dispensation from the governor about, we will support. Otherwise, we're giving information and happy to answer questions. So just wanted to remind you all that. But I will say, Philip, appreciate the Nonprofit Association's work on this. In fact, we have a little pop. We are hoping to be able to invest in community powered services and have a grant program to help support community engagement and nonprofits across the state in their work. So if you want to look it up, it's Pop 116, but we'll see if it appears in the governor's budget. I know we're at the end here. I want to make one more plug, but any other comments? Appreciate all your work. My last plug is that that our eligibility workforce is about at 60% of what we need to really support Oregonians. And so we have also a larger ask of about 54 million in general fund to get, and some federal funds to get 615 new budget eligibility workers. So this is the agency going, yes, we would sure like any help we can to help serve Oregonians better. So again, we'll see what appears in the governor's budget, but I just wanted to make sure we didn't end without a little mention of that. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, we're here as resources for whatever your work is, because we know you're working for Oregonians as much as we are. And so we appreciate that work. So thank you. Have a good new year. Have a good legislative session and a good Martin Luther King holiday coming up.